Okay, good morning. This is this is a OHS hearing, a combined hearing for docket numbers 24-32705-CON and 24-32744-CON. This is the combined hearing for Yale New Haven Hospital. The applicants in both matter. They seek certificates of need for the acquisition of imaging equipment pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 19A-638, small a, 10. Specifically, Yale New Haven Hospital seeks authorization to purchase one intraoperative MRI machine and one PET MR for, I'm going to ask this because is it St. Raphael's or St. Raphael?
Raphael.
That's what I thought, but it looks like Raphael. Okay. St. Raphael's campus under 24-32705-CON and the acquisition of two incremental CT scanners for the St. Raphael's campus as part of 24-32744-CON. Throughout the proceeding, I'll be interchangeably referring to Yale New Haven Hospital as YNHH and the St. Raphael's campus as SRC for brevity purposes. Today is October 30th, 2024. My name is Alicia Novi. Dr. Deidre S. Gifford, the Commissioner of the Office of Health Strategy, designated me to serve as hearing officer for this matter. To rule on all motions, I'd recommend findings of fact and conclusions of law upon completion of the hearing. Public Act 21-2, as amended by Public Act 22-3, authorizes an agency to hold a public hearing by means of electronic equipment. In accordance with this legislation, any person who participates orally in an electronic meeting shall make good faith effort to state his, her, or their name and title at the onset of each occasion that such person participates orally during an uninterrupted dialogue or series of questions and answers. We ask that all members of the public mute their device and that they are using, mute the device they are using to access the hearing and silence any additional devices that are around them. This public hearing being held for two CON applications pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, sections 19A-639A, small f, 2, which provides that HSP may hold a public hearing with respect to any certificate of need application submitted under Chapter 368Z. Although this will be a discretionary hearing, the manner in which OHS conducts these proceedings will be guided by Chapter 54 of the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act, the UAPA, and the regulations of Connecticut state agencies, sections 19A 9 through 24. The Office of Health Strategy staff are here to assist me in gathering facts related to this application and may be asking the applicant witnesses questions. I'm going to ask each person assisting with questions today to identify themselves with the name, the spelling of their last name, and their OHS title. Start with Mr. Lazarus.
Good morning, Stephen Lazarus, Lazarus, and I'm the supervisor of the Certificate of Need program.
Thank you. Ms. McLaughlin.
Good morning. My name is Yadira McLaughlin, MC, capital LAUGHLIN, and I'm a planning analyst, OHS, Certificate of Need program.
Thank you. Ms. Mariano.
Good morning. My name is Olivia Mariano, Mariano, and I'm a planning analyst with OHS.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Good morning. My name is Orman Clark, and my last name is spelled C-L-A-R-K-E.
And Ms. Tomchuk. We are having some technical difficulties with Ms. Tomchuk. Are you able to be heard? Okay. It looks like she is not. I will announce her for. I will go ahead and say her name. It is Nicole Tomchuk, Tomczuk, and she is Steve, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, she's a planning analyst from the Office of Health Strategy. Steve, you're muted.
She's a healthcare analyst.
Thank you. Thank you. She's a healthcare analyst for the Office of Health Strategy. Ms. Tomchuk is having some technical difficulties with her mic today, so you may not hear much from her. All right. Also present is Faye Fentis, who is helping us with all of our behind the scenes support and is a staff member for our agency. She will be doing the hearing logistics and will be gathering names for public comment, which, by the way, is now open at this time. If you would like to register for public comment, please do so in the chat function at this time if you would like to make one. Certificate of need process is a regulatory process, and as such, the highest level of respect will be accorded to the applicant, members of the public, and our staff. Our priority is the integrity and transparency of this process. Accordingly, decorum must be maintained by all present during these proceedings. This hearing is being transcribed and recorded, and the video will be made available on the OHS website and its YouTube account. All documents related to this hearing that have been or will be submitted to the Office of Health Strategy are available for review through our Certificate of Need portal, which is accessible on the OHS strategy on the Office of Health Strategy's CON webpage. In making my decision, I will consider and make written findings in accordance with Section 19A-639 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Lastly, as Zoom notified you in the course of either entering this hearing or right as recording started, I wish to point out that by appearing on camera in this virtual hearing, you are consenting to being filmed. If you wish to revoke your consent, please do so at this time. All right. So as of 3:30 last night, the CON portal contained pre-hearing tables of record for each CON. At the time that I looked it up, the exhibits are identified in the table from A to O on docket number 24-32705 CON and A to K for docket number 24-32744 CON. There are some other exhibits I will get to as well that will go in, and we did receive 2 packets that went into each docket number of community support, and those letters will also be uploaded as an exhibit. The applicant is hereby noticed I'm also taking administrative notice of the following documents: statewide healthcare facility services plan, the facilities and services inventory, the OHS acute care hospital discharge database, and the all payer claims database claims data. I also want to take notice of Yale New Haven Hospital agreed settlement 22-32586-CON and previously issued Yale New Haven Hospital decision 24-32735-CON. I may also make take administrative notice of hospital reporting system HRS, financial and utilization data, and also prior OHS decisions, agreed settlements, and determinations that may be relevant in this matter. Counsel for the applicants, can you please identify yourself for the record?
Yes, good morning, Hearing Officer Novi and OHS staff. My name is Joan Feldman, and I'm a partner with the law firm Shipman and Goodwin, counsel for the applicants.
Thank you. Attorney Feldman, are there any objections to the exhibits in the table of record for either 24-32705 or 24-32744?
I have no objections to the table of records as they appear right now.
Okay. Do you have any objections to the 2 packets of letters of support that went into each one becoming a full exhibit as well?
Oh, yeah, none. No
Okay.
objections.
All right. Or any of the other noticed documents that I just mentioned?
No objection.
All right. I'm going to mark all identified and marked exhibits are entered as full exhibits. Attorney Feldman, do you have any additional exhibits that you wish to enter at this time?
No, we do not.
All right, thank you. We'll now proceed in the order established for today's hearing. I would like to advise the applicants that we may ask questions related to your applications that you feel you've already addressed. We will do this for the purpose of ensuring that the public has knowledge of your proposals and for the purpose of clarification. I want to reassure you that we have reviewed both applications, all completeness responses, and pre-filed testimony for both applications, and I will do so many times before issuing a decision. As this hearing is being held virtually, we ask that all participants, to the extent possible, should enable the use of video cameras when testifying or commenting during proceedings. All participants shall mute their devices and should disable cameras when we go off the record or take a break. Please be advised that although we try and shut off the hearing recording during breaks, it may continue. If the recording is on, any audio or video not disabled will be accessible to all participants to this hearing. Public comment taken during the hearing will likely go in order established by OHS during the registration process. However, I may allow public officials to testify out of order. I or OHS staff will call each individual by name when it is his or her turn to speak. Registration for public comment is open and is scheduled to start after the technical testimony portion this morning. The applicant's witnesses must be available after public comment, as OHS may have follow-up questions based on public comment. Are there any housekeeping matters or procedural issues we need to address before we start, Attorney Feldman?
No.
All right. So with that, we're going to head into the technical portion. Attorney Feldman, is there an opening statement you would like to make?
Just a few comments. Again, good morning, Hearing Officer Novi and OHS staff. We have a significant amount of information and testimony to share with you today for two extraordinary projects underway at Yale New Haven Hospital. More specifically, the focus of today's hearing will be on the need for IMRI, PET MR, and 2 CTs, all of which will be hospital-based on the Yale New Haven Hospital St. Raphael's campus. First, you will hear from Dr. Lawrence, who will address the need for IMRI in the new Neurosciences Center. Then you will hear from Dr. Goodman, who will address the need for both PET MR and 2 CTs, or 2 photo counting CT scanners, both for the Neurosciences Center and the expanded emergency department on the St. Raphael's campus. I think now we're ready for Dr. Lawrence to provide his pre-file testimony.
Okay. So I'm going to ask, actually, if you can, are all of your, is everyone providing testimony in the room with you right now?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so we're going to do this a little differently. I'm going to ask that you say their names and then you're going to have them raise their hands so that we can visually note them. And then I will swear them in and then they can begin their testimony. So,
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to point to each of the individuals in the room, ask them to say their name, and could they all be sworn in together?
I'm going to
Just
swear them all in together. I would just like
Okay.
to note visually where they are in the room
Okay.
as well, so I can
Understood.
you can have them raise their hand just so we can see them. We'll swear them in with their hands raised anyways.
Dr. Maxwell Lawrence, Laurans.
Dr. Rob Goodman, Goodman.
Daniel Alexa, Alexa.
If we could have Mr. Alexa's, I'm sorry, his title.
Oh, I'm the Executive Director for System Radiology Operations.
Thank you.
Anthony Jocko, Senior Manager of Finance, GIA CCO.
Pam Steglerini, Senior Vice President, Administration.
Hearing Officer Novi, we're expecting one additional witness who has not yet arrived. I'll let you know when she's here.
We can swear them in if and when they're required to answer any questions.
That would be great.
Okay, so everybody who was just noticed or just said their names out loud, if you could all please raise your right hands. I will swear you in now. All right. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you provided in your pre-file and the evidence you shall give or have already given in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God or upon penalty of perjury? I'm going to have you go around the table, say your name, and say I do, so that we have a record of it. So,
Maxwell Lawrence, I do.
thank you.
Rob Goodman, I do.
Daniel Alexa, I do.
Anthony Jocko, I do.
Pam Steglerini, I do.
Great. Thank you. All right, and with that, you may begin testimony. When you are sorry, actually, let me give a few instructions. I'm sorry. When giving your testimony, please make sure to state your full name and spell your last name for our stenographer if you haven't already, and make sure that you adopt any written testimony you submitted on the record prior to starting your testimony. And if you're using acronyms, please define them so that the public listening will know what you're talking about. All right. Go ahead, Attorney Feldman.
Thank you very much. Good morning, hearing officer Novi and OHS staff. My name is Dr. Maxwell Lawrence. I'm an actively practicing neurosurgeon at Yale Hospital, and I'm the Senior Vice President of Neurosciences at YNHH. Very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the Neurosciences Center and the need for the proposed intraoperative MRI. I may refer to this during my testimony as IMRI, it's the abbreviation, or intraoperative MRI. I adopt this pre-filed testimony as my own. My colleagues and I are extraordinarily excited about the Neurosciences Center project, which we plan to have begin operations in 2027. We're going to share just a couple of slides to give a visual depiction of this significant project that we're undertaking. If you can follow my pointer on the screen, on the right side here, we have much of the existing St. Raphael's campus. The project centers around these two towers, the McGivney Tower here under my cursor and the Sherman Tower next to it. These represent a significant expansion of our abilities, capacities, and capabilities. There are about 200 patient beds in these towers. This is a visual rendering or architectural rendering of what we anticipate these may look like upon completion. This is taken obviously from across the street. This is the new entrance of the facility. For anyone who knows the St. Raphael's campus, this again represents a significant improvement in how patients will be able to access and enter the facility. During the April 2019 press conference on initiation of the project, we were thrilled to be able to partner with much of the community. And as represented here, Governor Lamont and former Mayor Tony Park joined us in announcing this substantial project. And then lastly, this is more of a real-time screenshot. You may recall the initial rendering that I provided, and this is sort of the state of the state with the outside of the McGivney facility on the right here beginning to take shape, and you can appreciate this is called a curtain wall, which represents the outside of the facility. So that you're aware, inside there's still quite a lot of work to do even on this building, and then we have the steel going up in the Sherman Tower, which will be slightly taller than the McGivney Tower, but this is where the project stands as of today. We can take these slides down. As I mentioned, we're really excited about this project and the plan for it to begin operations approximately in early 2027. And this excitement is based on the fact that this center will provide access to state-of-the-art care for patients suffering from significant neurologic disorders, as well as serving as a hub for neuroscience innovation in the care and treatment of patients who have such serious neurological diseases. If any of you have known patients or families of patients who suffer from serious neurological disease, I'm thinking of conditions like Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's and other movement disorders, stroke, or epilepsy, you know how life-altering and debilitating it can be to suffer these conditions. And if you've known these patients, you know how it really steals what makes us uniquely human. It steals our mind, and you know how limited some of our existing treatment modalities are in these spaces, and how important it is that we work to restore function for individuals suffering from those conditions. So this brings us to the role of an intraoperative MRI for neurosurgeons and its ability to help us visualize and assess an area in the patient's brain with targeted precision. I want to spend just one moment distinguishing between a traditional MRI and an intraoperative MRI. Imaging has really come a very long way, and Dr. Goodman will share some more detail when he provides his testimony, but imaging has come a long way in being able to provide us the detailed visualization of a patient's anatomy. The intraoperative portion allows real-time visualization of those structures while we're performing interventions and surgeries. Specifically, it allows us as neurosurgeons to monitor a patient's bleeding for other complications, for damage to surrounding tissue, allowing us to better protect brain function and reducing the need for additional surgeries, bringing patients back to an operating room for an additional procedure. We're able to complete our interventions at the time of the original procedure as a result. So most commonly, currently, but increasingly in other fields, the intraoperative MRI is used to remove tumors with targeted precision. But it can also be used to assist in surgery for vascular malformations, aneurysms, and stroke. The intraoperative imaging technology and stimulation of brain centers can also be used currently and in the future to treat more complex conditions. We can use deep brain stimulators inserted with sub-millimeter accuracy to treat movement disorders now. More complex conditions like intractable depression, post-traumatic stress disorder are on the horizon. But even today, obsessive compulsive disorder has a known target that we can use with deep brain stimulation to provide treatment. I'm going to provide a couple of examples with some detail in terms of how this technology can be effectively used in this new neurosciences center. And this is where targeted precision and accuracy is vital to the work that we do. In epilepsy, patients have a portion of their brain which abnormally discharges signals that can lead to a seizure. We can identify that focus, that eleptogenic focus. We can provide a resection of that brain tissue and stop patients from having seizures so that they don't need their seizure medications anymore. And many of them can return to normal function. One of the biggest problems that patients have who have epilepsy is that they often can't drive because of the risk in driving. We can use traditional brain resection like we do in a tumor. We can also use a technology called laser interstitial thermal therapy, or LIT, which can ablate that tissue, again, removing that eleptogenic focus. We can also place another kind of stimulator called a responsive neurostimulator, or RNS, if patients have an eleptogenic focus that starts in a part of the brain that we can't injure or remove. So imagine, for example, someone whose speech center was the eleptogenic focus. And if we were to remove that part of the brain, that patient would never speak again. In those cases, we can insert a stimulator into that part of the brain. Again, this requires use of advanced imaging modalities and intraoperative MRI to be able to insert those devices with the precision necessary. I'm sure everyone here has heard of a stroke and understands that a stroke can lead to significant neurological injury. Essentially, a stroke is when a blood vessel is blocked and can no longer feed the brain properly. That often occurs because of a thrombus that is released from a part of the body and lands in a blood vessel. We can perform procedures called a thrombectomy, which is a minimally invasive technique of removing a blood clot. And this is done in an imaging, in a biplane X-ray style imaging room. By co-locating an intraoperative MRI with this other technology, we can vastly improve our diagnosis to treatment time. There's a saying in stroke care that time is brain. The faster we can get treatments for patients, the more brain we can save and the better the patient's outcome. So co-locating an imaging machine like an intraoperative MRI with the fluoroscopy and X-ray equipment required to do the thrombectomy dramatically reduces wasted minutes that we spend moving patients around the facility. There's another condition called a subarachnoid hemorrhage, which is bleeding in the brain that occurs because of a weakness in a blood vessel called an aneurysm. 15% of the time, patients have multiple aneurysms, and we don't know which one has caused the bleeding. Using MRI technology, we can do something called vessel wall imaging, which is, again, with a greater precision, look at the walls of that aneurysm and understand which one has hemorrhaged. So intraoperative MRI allows us for clear identification of that source of bleeding, and again, easy facilitation of transporting that patient for treatment into an operating room. These are highly unstable patients. This condition is so dangerous, in fact, that about half of patients who suffer a ruptured aneurysm never even make it to the hospital. And transporting unstable patients with unsecured aneurysms from imaging facilities to operating rooms and elsewhere is always a risk. And so this facilitates patient safety. We can use an intraoperative MRI to identify the extent to which we're able to complete an operation successfully. A different kind of stroke is what's called a hemorrhagic stroke, or when there's bleeding into the brain parenchyma itself, into the substance of the brain. One of the treatments necessary can be to remove that blood clot that's sitting in the brain and pushing on sensitive tissues. By using an intraoperative MRI, we can identify that the blood clot has been successfully removed, and we can do that immediately after the surgery, again, instead of transporting the patient around the hospital to make that diagnosis. I'm going to provide just a couple of more examples. Much like in resecting brain tumors, we can use this technology to identify if arteriovenous malformations or abnormal connections between blood vessels in the brain, which become tangled and are similarly dangerous to aneurysms, have been completely removed. And we can provide post-operative imaging in the intraoperative MRI to ensure that this has been done completely at the conclusion of a surgery. I'm going to move into a little bit of a different category of treatments that can be provided with this technology. Deep brain stimulation can be done for patients with Parkinson's disease and movement disorders. Again, using the intraoperative MRI to provide sub-millimeter accuracy, using image guidance and then post-operative confirmation means that we don't have to bring the patient back to the operating room multiple times, and we can identify that the treatment has been successfully executed. So these are a few examples of how the intraoperative MRI can currently be used. They don't represent all of the current permutations and combinations of use, nor some of the future opportunities. I do want to emphasize that having this technology in the operating room is safer for the patient. I think I've provided a couple of examples that highlight that. But to reinforce it, patients who are sedated or have unstable neurological conditions don't have to be transported from the operating room to the imaging suite in order to conduct MRIs in this situation. So in addition to improved safety, that co-localization also reduces delays in the actual surgery or procedure that is ongoing. I want to highlight a couple of prospects for innovation, what the future of this technology could bring as well. We can place deep brain cannulas for the direct delivery of new treatments, including gene therapy, viral vectors, and nanoparticles. In fact, we are one of the very few centers in the country currently conducting a gene therapy trial for Parkinson's disease. The use of the intraoperative MRI is required for the accuracy and safety of these procedures. Put a tiny cannula into a place in the brain to provide a new treatment on a protocol, a clinical trial protocol, we have to ensure that it is placed in exactly the right location in order to safely provide that new treatment. There's a very new FDA-approved technology called high-frequency ultrasound, which actually allows us to lesion the brain. And when I say lesion the brain, we would make small injuries to a portion of the brain where the circuits are abnormally conducting signals in order to effectively rewire the signals of the brain. This works remarkably well, as I've mentioned, in the form of deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's disease. But the high-frequency ultrasound now allows us to do this kind of a procedure without ever making an incision in the patient's scalp. The ultrasound can be directed and provide that tiny little injury in the right location. At the moment, the most common indication is Parkinson's disease and movement disorders. We have that part of the brain mapped out pretty well, but in the future, we expect this kind of technology to apply to depression and such things like anxiety. We also soon expect another kind of ultrasound technology to soon be approved by the FDA called low-frequency ultrasound. In the brain, blood vessels have very tight connections. It's called the blood-brain barrier. And that means that certain things can't cross that blood-brain barrier, and that's protective for our brain in many ways. But unfortunately, it also means that the medicines that we provide for patients also can't cross that blood-brain barrier and can't treat the brain. And that's been one of the biggest challenges we've faced in trying to find treatments for Alzheimer's disease and brain tumors and other conditions. Low frequency ultrasound allows us to functionally open that blood-brain barrier and to allow the passage of medicines or other treatments from the blood into the brain. This will have to be done in a facility like the Neurosciences Center, because in opening the blood-brain barrier, there are also risks created, in particular risks of brain hemorrhage. And so we would need to perform these interventions in a facility that can care for those kinds of complications. As we further map the complex circuitry of the brain, which contributes to neuropsychological disorders, we'll have the opportunity to perform these kinds of treatments, as well as to place stimulators, use high-frequency ultrasound and other techniques to effectively treat conditions such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and autism. Again, conditions, and if you've seen patients or family members suffering from these conditions, that really rob patients of their whole lives. I do want to make one last note. Again, unlike a traditional MRI, which has its own set of billing codes, the intraoperative MRI is done for patients who are staying in the hospital. And because they're already in the hospital and billed typically under a DRG, there's not an incremental cost to patients or to insurers as a result of that technology. I believe that establishing the intraoperative MRI platform in the Neurosciences Center really paves the way for Connecticut to become a leader in delivering novel and life-changing clinical treatments for patients suffering from serious neurological conditions. Be happy to take any of your questions. Thank you.
I just have one question. You did say that it's billed under a DRG. Can you just elaborate on that in case we have members of the public who are listening and might not know that acronym?
Yeah, I may phone a friend. I believe the acronym stands for diagnosis-related grouping.
Okay.
Diagnosis-related grouping. That's a way in which we provide a bill to insurers that accounts for all of the care that a patient receives while admitted to the hospital. So if a patient came in for any condition, let's say removal of a brain tumor, they would be admitted through the emergency. They may be admitted to the emergency room. They may have an inpatient stay, an ICU stay. They may have an operation done, series of imaging before and after surgery. But the bill is the same regardless of the number of interventions that we provide while that patient is here. So we as the institution take the risk in this circumstance because the intraoperative MRI is already included as part of the bill.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll go through both of your witnesses first, and then we'll take a quick break. We'll come back with OHS questions. So Attorney Feldman, if you'd like to have your second witness, second/third.
Goodman.
So, good morning, Attorney Novi and OHS staff. My name is Dr. Rob Goodman, and I'm pleased to have this opportunity to present to you my thoughts on the importance of this application, the PET MRI application, in my role as Chief of Radiology for Yale Hospital. I believe that I am able to express my thoughts on the importance of this application for the patients of Connecticut and for the community at large for which we serve. Firstly, I'd like to adopt my pre-filed testimony as my own. So it's my absolute privilege as Chief of Radiology for Yale New Haven Hospital to help develop progressive, world-class imaging here in the heart of the state. And I take great pride in doing this because I feel it's what the people of Connecticut deserve. With this application, we're asking your approval for a PET MRI scanner. That's a positron emission tomography magnetic resonance imaging scanner, PET MRI scanner, which would be the first in the state and if approved, would be located in the Neuroscience Tower in the St. Graves campus. PET-MRI is an established technology. It's available in New York, it's available in Massachusetts, it's available in many states across the country, but it's not available in Connecticut. And this means that the patients of Connecticut have to travel out of state if they're going to obtain the benefits of this technology. I believe that it's time for the patients of Connecticut to be able to have this option within their home state. So PET-MRI is the first synchronous, integrated, cross-modality scanner that really demonstrates capability for advancing with absolute extreme precision the ability for physicians at Yale New Haven Hospital to diagnose, to stage, and to manage a myriad of different disease conditions. I think it's also important to note that PET-MRI is very different from PET-CT, PET computed tomography, for three main reasons. PET-MRI has far superior soft tissue definition than PET-CT. Number two, PET-MRI has a much lower dose than PET-CT scans. And number three, PET-MRI eliminates the need for patients who need a PET scan and an MRI scan as part of the disease process to have multiple imaging tests and examinations. So let me give you some examples of why PET-MRI would be so advantageous to the people of Connecticut. Let me start with oncology. Patients who have cholangiocarcinoma, that's a cancer of the liver, if they have a PET-MRI scan, it changes the management of the disease process 30% of the time. We know that patients with rectal cancer, PET-MRI is better than MRI alone in determining disease planning. In the field of cardiology, PET-MRI is now the investigation of choice for infiltrative or inflammatory cardiac diseases such as myocarditis or sarcoidosis. But let me focus really on the benefits of PET-MRI in the neuroscience field, because this is really the most important component here. PET-MRI allows us to visualize the metabolic activity in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, movement disorders. And with drugs now available for Alzheimer's disease, this allows us for the very first time to be able to use imaging to determine success with drugs. Dr. Lawrence also spoke about stroke. PET-MRI is also exquisitely good at determining neuroplasticity. That's the amount of brain that can recover after a stroke. And that helps us determine recovery plans for patients with stroke. And also you heard about epilepsy already. PET-MRI with exquisite detail allows us to see where the metabolic and anatomical focus of epilepsy is starting from to allow Dr. Lawrence and his colleagues to do surgical treatment for those patients. And also in neuropsychiatric diseases, PET-MRI really opens the door for understanding schizophrenia, depression, OCD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and that allows us to deal with that large group of neuropsychiatric conditions. So in summary, I feel very strongly that PET-MRI will play a major role in our goal in the Neuroscience Center of making sure that you stay you. And I have to answer any questions.
I think we're gonna wait and do questions after, but do you want to go ahead and now move to the testimony for the CT scanners?
Yes, please.
Thank you again. So I'll like to adopt my pre-filed testimony as my own. And this application is for 2 hospital-based CT scanners for the Neuroscience Tower in the St. Raphael's campus. And I think it's important to emphasize that currently we have 2 CT scanners at the St. Graves campus, which are acting at 186% utilization rate, which is far beyond OHS's benchmark and industry standards for utilization. With the opening of the Neuroscience Tower, we will have 214 additional beds in the St. Graves campus, and we are doubling the emergency department's capacity. These 2 developments make 2 additional CT scanners absolutely essential. What we're proposing is that we we implement two next generation CT scanners that have dose reduction and image clarity advantages over conventional CT scanners. These photon CT scanners are the next generation for CT scanners and will become the industry standard for CT scanners moving forwards. But in the field of neuroscience, these scanners have exquisite ability to detail things such as the skull base. They allow us to determine leaks from cerebrospinal fluid from the brain. And they also allow us to determine spinal imaging very clearly. So in summary, the CT scanners are essential for the St. Raphael's campus. All our scanners in Yale New Haven Hospital are working above utilization for OHS benchmarks, both hospital and ambulatory. If we were to put these two new CT scanners in operation today, we would still be operating overutilization for benchmarks across our enterprise, and that's including the two CT scanners that were approved previously by OHS. Being able to have the CT scanners approved now allows us to move forward with our planning process and our construction timeline to allow the Neuroscience Tower to be the success that we want it to be. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and ask Attorney Feldman, do you have any follow-up questions you'd like to ask? I'm thinking at this time we'll take a quick break and then come back for OHS questions.
I do not have any follow-up questions.
Okay, we'll take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at, we'll come back at 10. We will follow up with questions from OHS at that time. And then Attorney Feldman, if you have any questions after our questions, you can ask those, and then we'll go into public comment. So we will go on break for about 18 minutes now, and then come back at 10 a.m. for questions. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you in 18 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, as you were just informed, your being on camera in this meeting is your consent to being filmed. If you wish to revoke that consent, please exit this meeting at this time. All right, thank you everybody for staying. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and welcome everybody back to the continued hearing for Yale New Haven Hospital's 2 CON filings for docket number 24-32705 CON and 24-32744 CON. We're going to begin with OHS questions now. I'm going to go ahead and ask those questions. I think I'm going to go in the order that is very similar to Attorney Feldman's questions. We will start with questions for the iMRI machine first. And it's Lauren, correct?
Lawrence.
Lauren. All right. Okay, Dr. Lauren, or whoever is best to answer these questions. These are there are 2 questions, and or actually before we do that, let's go ahead and ask for your late file, a late file of the slides that you use, just so that we have those on the record for the public as well to view after the hearing. We will mark those as late file 1. If you see me looking down, I take notes by hand. It's slow, but it works for me. So if I'm a little slow at getting back to you, I am still writing. All right. On page 31 of the pre-file testimony, excuse me, it's marked on minus 31. However, at the bottom of the page when it was filed in the right-hand corner, that page is marked as 12. It says of the pre-file testimony, it states that the PSA is at 114% for MRI, hospital-based MRIs. Does this include the MRI that was recently granted in decision 24-32735?
You refer to this as the pre-file, but are you referring to the issue statement?
Actually on the page, it says response to public hearing issues. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, just
it
give
is
us a second.
Yep.
You have So you're referring to,
Second
what
sentence
question?
under the table that has the official town name and reason for inclusion says utilization at these sites in the PSA was 114% of capacity. Actually, first and second question, or first and second sentence, sorry.
We found the spot.
It says.
Oh,
Does that include the recently granted MRI machine from decision 24-32735?
this is someone I just never proved yet.
That's 32735.
Okay, submitted this. Yeah, I might have to say do a file on this, but I don't believe it is.
Okay. So why don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think. Hearing Officer Novi, I think there is a little confusion because there's a lot of moving parts here, and I just want to make sure we answer the question correctly. The MRI that was approved most recently, I believe it was this week or last week, the 21st, correct? We're talking
Yes.
about that MRI.
Yes.
That is not an interoperative MRI. And
I
so-
understand, but you're pointing to the hospital-based MRIs and the utilization of those sites as a reason for the need for the IMRI. So as someone who's read all of your imaging filings, I want to make sure I'm getting my
Right.
head wrapped around which.
Right. There's no relationship between that data and the need for IMRI. It's used solely in the operating room. The utilization is much lower because of the time, the time of the procedure. If you have somebody in a surgical room, they're going to be there as long as the surgery. It's not like a CT machine or an MRI machine where people go in and out, right? This is a surgical procedure, so it really has no relevance. You want to,
Well, I think what I
why
want.
don't you state your name?
Okay, I'm Dan Alexa, I'm the Executive Director for System Radiology Operations. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So what you're referring to is a service area for the IMRI that we're proposing. And that is a larger service area than what our service area is that we would normally do for our MRI scanners. So I believe that that percentage that we're talking about includes all of the service areas that we're covering under the IMRI plan. So what I would say, I reserve the right to make sure that we check up on this later, but the new MRI that we just proposed would not be included in that. But remember that it's not focused, our service area for our MRI is different than the service area for the IMRI.
Understood, but I am seeing here quite a good bit of dedication to the MRI machines. So I want to make sure in the what was titled response to public hearing issues. So I just want to make sure that because I've been reading quite a few applications from you guys lately,
Yeah.
that we are getting an accurate and complete picture. So if I could just ask you to do a late file with the new that would for the utilization rate that would include the newly approved machine.
Right. So Hearing Officer Novi, just want to be clear that we provided this information directly in response to your query. It's not that we were using it to advocate for need related to the IMRI. So it's really not.
I understand, but I'm just gonna put that on record so that, you know, and there are gonna be some things you'll see me ask for that maybe are, maybe not with the IMRI, but with, especially with the PET MR, that you might, I'm going to ask for just for public clarification.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Yeah.
All right, and that is the extent of my questions for the IMRI.
Okay, thank you.
So next we'll move to the PET MRI. And again, you may hear me ask for something that is going to, it's more for public clarification than for anything that was a question out of this hearing. I would like to ask for we'll call this late file 3. If you could do a visual representation of compare the PET MR scans and the process to the doing a PET scan and an MRI separately, so that the public can visually see what the differences would look like, how, you know, what the time differences might be, indicate what the timelines are for each one from order to test results, and indicate when additional people, appointments, and times are needed.
Okay, I just want to clarify.
Yes, please feel free.
Okay, thank you. These are totally different advanced pieces of imaging equipment.
Yes.
One is a simultaneous image of the patient. The other are 2 distinct studies that are not integrated. So they're different. So for the purpose of comparison, I respect your question and we will provide those time differences, but the indications for which way you go as an ordering physician are completely separate and apart from whether having 2 separate studies that don't result in the same type of information as the PET MRI is really going to be dictated by the physician and the need for the study and the precision that is necessary. But we will provide the timelines for your request.
Again, some of these are for public
Okay,
knowledge and information so that they could see what the advantages and what types of things might, because you can do both of these separately. It may take more time
yes,
to see, so that we can lay out for
okay.
needs.
And you said that was late file 3. What happened to late file 2?
Late file 2 is the including of the new MRI machine in the MRI. My only question from the IMRI.
Can we go off record, please?
Sure, of course.
We're back, hearing officer.
All right.
I want to get some clarification with respect to late file two. Related to the PSA and the MRI utilization. You're asking for projections on which MRI? Let me just be clear about that.
The hospital-based MRI, that was because there, it says that 16 hospital MRIs in the PSA, and that utilization at these sites in the PSA was at 114% of capacity.
So when you talk about the hospital-based MRI, are you referring to the one that was approved last on the 21st?
Yes.
Okay, so the data that's in that chart, right, is 2022 utilization data. I just want to be clear that when we provide the late file, the data will be projections only.
Okay.
Because we don't, it was just approved last week.
That's understandable. We'll take the projections about what that usage rate will be with the other 16.
And it's not including the IMR.
Not including the IMRI.
And I just want to be clear that with respect to the PET MR or MRI,
Yes.
the indications for that are totally distinct and specialized by patient condition and diagnosis.
Understand. I have
yes.
questions on that.
Okay, I'll let you ask your question.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll start off with my first question is how many people will be eligible for scans using the patient selection criteria?
With what?
In the PET MRI.
Yeah, I had that.
So with a PET MRI scan, we can do approximately 1 patient per hour. The PET MRI will be operational from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5 days a week, because we need to have the radio tracer availability, which isn't available after hours. So we'll be able to do 5 times 8 each week. 40 patients per week.
I'm sorry, you said 14 or 40?
40.
Okay. Okay, so we'll go to
And again, just for clarification, so we're all on the same we all have the same understanding. This PET MR will be located in the Neurosciences Center, and it will primarily be used for patients that are in the Neurosciences Center who suffer from mobility issues, let's say, generally speaking, right? And so there are unique advantages with respect to their not having to come and schedule 2 separate exams on 2 separate days and come back to the hospital or what.
understood.
Okay.
Right now, I'm just trying to establish with some questions how many people they can put in the machine, and it'll get a little further in after that. How will patients be assessed for PET MR scans? What criteria will you use, and what criteria will you use?
we'll have Dr. Goodman answer that question.
So for PET MRI requests, radiology will always protocol and authorize requests for PET MRI to make sure that the indications are correct. And I expect that many of the referrals will be discussed at our interdisciplinary tumor boards across the enterprise, where a patient's case is discussed and the option to solve the question with PET MRI will be proposed. And if agreed upon, that would be a way to determine whether a PET MRI is indicated for that patient.
Do you have patient selection criteria defined?
There are patient selection criteria defined by bodies, national bodies that determine which conditions PET MRI is beneficial in, and we would adopt those criteria.
What are these bodies?
Well,
Bodies, the accrediting bodies.
in the testimony.
Yeah.
It's the International EANM, SNMMI, ISMRM consensus recommendation for PET MRI.
It's in the application. Do you, what, Gerald, do we have it?
It's exhibit 1.
Yes. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Exhibit 1, I'm sorry.
Exhibit 1, yes.
And where in Exhibit 1?
It's a paper. It's a consensus recommendation
Okay.
paper.
Okay. So I know we did discuss just a little bit about, actually that was for the, sorry, that was for the billing for another one. Please detail what the billing for their service would include. I think I may have lost Yale New Haven.
No, we're here.
Oh, okay. You're just not moving on the screen. That
We're gonna have Dan Alexa take the first stab, and then Jeremias Williams will follow because they both have. Yes, yes.
Yes, I just want to note that you guys have frozen on the video feed, at least my video feed. So I am not seeing anybody, and Mr. Lazarus has nodded his head. So if you could be very descriptive when someone starts to speak, because oh, there we go. We got you back again.
Okay, can you please restate the question?
Sure. Please explain in detail what the billing for the service would include.
Which service are you
The
referring
PET
to?
MRI. We're
Okay.
on questions only about PET MRI right now.
You mean, are you referring to, when you talk about billing, are you talking about the CPT code? What exactly are
Well,
you?
we can start there. Are there CPT codes?
There are not.
Wait. So Jeremias Williams, our expert, is here now, so she will need to be sworn in before she provides her testimony.
Okay. All right. Ma'am, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the testimony and evidence you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and title for the record, ma'am.
Jeremias Williams, Senior Vice President, Payer Strategy and Innovation for Yale New Haven Health System.
All right. Go ahead.
And I'm sorry.
Well, the first thing that I would like to say about this is a new and novel technology that is gaining ground in academic medical centers across the country. So this is something that has not completely yet been established and is continuing to grow. And we do expect over the next several years, with our involvement as well, that there will be billing that will be aligned with PET MR. Currently, there aren't codes specific to PET MRI on its own. And so most other institutions are getting reimbursed for the scans. There's not exactly clear on how that's doing that yet, but we will figure that out. This is, like we're saying, this is a novel new technology that we're trying to bring to the state of Connecticut that will help us treat our patients, our family members, our friends from our state from our region and from across the country. So that is really what we're trying to do with this. And so the fact that we are kind of at the tip of the spear with it, there will be some learning involved. So I'm saying this, for the benefit of the community, that this is something that will develop, but it's something that is going to be, it is really the future in really combining metabolic and anatomic imaging. So you want to add anything to
I
that?
was only going to emphasize, thank you, Dan, that today there are not CPT codes that exist for the PET MR.
Are there HCPCS codes for this service?
No, there are not. There are currently no codes that would be used specifically for billing applicable specifically to this service.
And there are other hospitals in our region, such as MGH, NYU, that are doing this as well.
Okay. Does Medicaid currently cover scans on this machine?
We don't know because we don't have the machine, and typically if we had new technology, once we get that approved, we would then go to the department and request a rate. Right?
If the machine is not covered by Medicaid, how will indigent patients get access to the scanner?
Did you hear the question? If it's not covered by Medicaid, we see
Yeah, so
that possible.
I think that, and I'm gonna take a little freedom here and basically say, like, I believe this to be like any other service that we provide at the hospital. Not only are we an academic medical center, but we are also a community safety net hospital, and we're not going to deny the right level of care to any patients. So if a patient presents and they need this type of care, it doesn't matter what their insurance carrier is or who's providing it. It's really based on what is needed, and then we will have, we'll make sure that it is part of a Medicaid plan, and we will have self-pay rates due to our, I think we have generous policy right now, so this is going to be accessible to anybody who needs this care. It's not going to be differentiated by payer or by amount of money people have. It's going to be based on the condition they have.
Just a follow-up response, please.
Sure. I would just add that right now, it's not covered under any of our payer arrangements, commercial or Medicaid. And so that would be explored after the CON approval. Then we would understand the coverage requirements by payer and ensure that it is accessible across the board, including for Medicaid.
Okay. Would prior approval be needed for these types of scans?
Can you clarify the question?
Would prior approval be needed for these scans?
Yeah,
Do you mean like?
you mean
what-
prior authorization?
Yes, prior authorization, yes.
It is likely that prior authorization would be required for these scans as it's required for other high-tech imaging scans.
All right. So you did say that there are currently 50 PET MRI machines in use in the country. Can you provide any information such as the scans and costs for the machines in the Northeast in New York that are currently around you?
Just clarification, when you say cost for what? Are
The
you asking
cost for scans, what they're charging.
the study?
Yes.
You're asking about the study.
Yeah, I'm asking, I assume that if you're going in to get a piece of new technology and you know that there are machines located nearby in the state next door, both 2 states next door, that you would have looked at how they are charging for these scans, what the costs are prior to deciding to purchase one, and seeing what they are doing with this machine. And are they billing Medicaid for their scans right now?
Okay, just want to clarify the question so we answer it appropriately.
Mhm.
I think what we said is that currently across the nation, there is no CPT code.
Mhm.
The hospitals, or mostly academic medical centers that have a PET MRI, are working on a case-by-case basis with payers that they are contracted with and are negotiating a rate. So there is no specific trend that we're aware of, but I'll let Jeremias.
Sure. So that's the first clarification that by cost, you meant really price. What is the
Yes.
price of the scan? And so our contracts are specific to our relationships with payers. And so regardless of what the price may be in neighboring states with other entities, that would not be indicative of what the price would be for us. And so we would not use that specific information in our indication. So we are not currently aware of pricing that is applicable to other entities in other neighboring states.
But if this is a new technology, and I'm going to ask this, I understand that you might not, but you wouldn't get a machine that is completely out of the price range or encourage patients at your hospital to go into medical debt to get this scan. So I have a hard time with, and we can make this a late file, that, you know, you said that this is novel, it's new, there are two right next door. How are they, I want to, because this is going to be the first in Connecticut, we want to give the public an understanding of what they could get if they went to a different state and what that would look like in Connecticut.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. We're just gonna take a minute if we could go be muted.
Mhm.
So we can make sure we have the right people answering.
All right. All right, Yale, you look frozen. We want to make sure that you are here. Oh, there you go. You moved again. Sorry, we got stuck with a doctor with his hands like this. We wanted to make sure that you weren't frozen.
Thank you.
So I'll
So
clear up
we
the wait question.
don't Hearing Officer Novi, thank you
Yes.
for the additional time, just because we took some time making sure we understand the question. Could you restate the question once again, please?
Sure. There are currently 50 PET MRs in use in the country, including 2 in neighboring states. Please provide information on the scans and costs for the machine in the Northeast in New York, and compare how your costs and usage of that machine would compare to those. Because we want to make sure that
I just want to clarify, when you say costs, that are you talking about price, what we charge for the study? Or are you talking about the cost for purchasing the machine?
not the cost for purchasing the machine. We're talking about what the patient-centered costs. So
What the
what will,
patient's costs would be? Is that
yes,
the question?
yes.
Okay.
I believe that we have talked to others, right, to understand whether or not they've been able to bill for the service. And we found that others have been able to bill for the service. We do not have specific information on the price that's applicable with other entities because we are not privy to their specific payer arrangements. We would work with our payers to establish a specific arrangement. For patients that are commercially insured, the impact to the patient is really whatever the cost share is for that patient as defined by the benefit plan that the patient has with the payer with which they are insured. For patients who are uninsured, we have a generous financial assistance policy that would apply to ensure that they are not impacted in a negative way by the cost of this machine.
And we're just would like to elaborate a little bit more, Dr. Goodman, about this.
Yeah, and again, it goes to us ensuring that patients that are having this study are suffering from a condition for which the study would be indicated. And if we didn't have this study, they would likely be having a PET scan and an MRI scan separately and being charged for those 2 studies.
Now, how would billing for the PET MR study compare to the separate billing for the PET study and the MRI study?
So a separate study for a PET scan and MRI would have 2 separate bills, potentially 2 different times, 2 different codes, 2 different payments, and 2 different cost shares applied for a patient. For the combination procedure, it's going to be 1 service, 1 bill, 1 code, and 1 cost share for the patient. So many circumstances, it may be more beneficial to the patient from a financial perspective than the 2 separate scans.
Just one further point here, hearing Officer Novi, do you want to talk about that where PET CT originated? This was a similar issue.
I don't have much to elaborate on that, to be honest. So I think that that's true with any type of hybrid imaging that comes along, you know.
Okay, how would, I know I'm sorry, the woman at the back of the table, Miss Williams?
Yes.
How would the benefits, if there was a, for this compare to an increased cost that a consumer might see?
So the benefits are defined by the payers.
Mhm.
And typically, payers have a consistent benefit approach to a consistent set of services. So what I mean by that is for all radiologic procedures, the benefit that would be applicable would typically be the same, whether it's a $50 copay or a specified coinsurance, et cetera. So radiology procedures are often copay based. It does depend on the payer. It is payer defined. I would expect the cost share to be comparable for the combination versus the two, or better, either comparable or better, because you're going from two separate scans to one.
I think it's also important for the community to understand that having a scan like this, one of the goals of it is to help diagnose more quickly, for people to advance their care so that the rest of their treatment can be done more quickly. And, you know, I don't know that we have measured this, but there's potential to reduce downstream care as well. So you're talking about the cost of one little part of a patient journey. Somebody who has this scan, this isn't the only thing they're having. They're having many, many, many things that are going to face them. This is just one of the tools that's actually going to help them get to the diagnosis more quickly and enable us to provide that patient with better care, give the physician a better tool, and in order for us to get to the end when they are cured faster, better, and hopefully cheaper.
Now some of the other PET MR machines around our state are being used for research. Will this machine be used for research?
No, it will not.
I'm sorry, I could not hear that answer.
It will not be used for research.
It will not. Okay. If there is downtime and the machine is open, will it be used for either standalone MRI or PET scans?
So our intention is to utilize this as a PET MRI scanner, and that is how we are looking at it. It can scan itself on its own. So our intention is to use it as a PET MRI scanner.
Okay. All right. That is it for my PET MRI questions. We'll now move over to the CT scanners. We'll start with given let's see, I just want to see where I feel like starting. Hold on one second. Actually, I got asked if we can meet quickly, so I am going to ask for about a 5-minute break. We'll call it we'll do a quick 10-minute break. Also, you guys have just frozen on us again, so I might suggest checking your up. You've disappeared. Oh, there you are again. Okay. So let's take a quick 10-minute break. And then we can get to the questions for our last section for the 2 CT scanners. And then we'll go into public comment. I do want to mention before we head to break that public comment is open. If you would like to sign up for our public comment, you can do so in our chat function right now. Or if you would like to send an emailed public comment, you may do that at any time within the next week to concomment@ct.gov. Again, you can email comments to concomment@ct.gov anytime between now and next Wednesday. We'll go on break until about 10:55. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you in a few minutes. All right. The Zoom voice has just notified you. Let me get through this. As the Zoom voice has just notified you, we are recording this hearing, and your remaining in this hearing is your consent to being recorded. If you would like to revoked your consent, please vacate or please leave the Zoom hearing at this time.
I need 1 more minute, please.
That's fine. You guys can go off and we'll wait for you to.
Hi, Hearing Officer Dovey.
Okay.
I do ask you if I could ask some rebuttal questions to our witnesses here.
Sure. Do you want me to finish up with all of our questions and then you can go on to all of yours, or do you want to do it as we go?
I would just, at this point, like to do some questions about PET MRI right now, just
No
to
problem.
clarify what I view as.
No problem. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to start by asking Dr. Goodman a question. Can you please explain to me when a PET MRI would be indicated versus performing 2 separate studies?
Yeah, so with the advent of PET MRI, there are certain conditions where one would need to have that study done on one piece of equipment. For example, the heart. To do a PET MRI on a heart to see if it's got myocarditis is something you cannot do separately on a PET scan and an MRI, because you have to have that image at the same time, the same place, on the same patient.
So are you basically saying that if you performed 2 separate studies where the patient had to go maybe even 2 separate days, or go through 2 separate studies, that you would not have the same information available to you for diagnostic purposes that you would with an integrated study? Are you going to have equal information?
No, you need that integrated study.
And why? Can you explain why?
Because MRI has far more soft tissue delineation than a PET CT. So if I did a PET CT on a heart, I would just see a blob. If I do a PET MRI on a heart, a PET MRI on a heart, I can see exactly where that activity is because the MRI scan delineates the heart better than a CT.
So, and I welcome Dr. Lawrence too, with respect to the neuroscience center where this is going to be primarily situated, it will be hospital-based situated. In the case of patients who are suffering from some sort of neurological disease, the information that you're going to get from PET MR, how is that different from any information you can currently acquire from a diagnostic imaging perspective?
Well, let's go to the epilepsy case again. Epilepsy, we can see where the metabolic activity of the seizure focus is, and we can see at the same time where that activity is correlating to a portion of the brain in MRI scan. You can't do that on an MRI scan separately and a PET scan separately.
So how does that impact diagnosis and outcomes?
Simply changes it, but it will medicine and improves it.
Yeah, this is Max Lawrence. I would only add that currently patients undergoing a workup for epilepsy and a potential surgery undergo several phases, which includes a combination of imaging modalities, and this would potentially replace several of them in order to get what's both a more accurate diagnosis and more rapid.
And from a cost effectiveness perspective, you're saying it's one study versus several? Okay. I have another question for Doremius Williams. Can you comment for me with respect to what the impact could be for patients who from a financial standpoint, who undergo this very medically necessary diagnostic exam?
Sure. Based on the indications of this exam, the fact that it replaces potentially several exams, and how patients' health insurance benefits work, I would expect there to either be no impact or potentially improved benefit to patients because they will have less cost share liability or application with a single test versus multiple tests. For patients who are uninsured, we have a very generous financial assistance policy that would be applied, and we would not expect there to be any increase or impact on medical debt.
So you're saying that by offering this type of imaging modality, it does not present a situation where it will result in patients experiencing medical debt? Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that we would not have such an expectation. If anything, we actually expect the financial experience for the patient to improve.
Okay, and just for clarifications, if with respect to Medicaid patients, do they currently cover these exams separately?
It is separately, yes. Separately, PET and MRI are covered today.
And if Medicaid does cover this exam, which we assume they will on some level, like we have learned from other states, is there going to be any financial impact on the patient?
I would not expect there to be any financial impact on the patient, similar to how there's no financial burden on the patient for the separate scans today.
Correct. So there's no cost sharing for Medicaid patients?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm done.
Okay. So I do see that there are certain things like heart studies and epilepsy, which would benefit from that. How we don't have that technology available in the state. how is that different than the current diagnostic procedures that exist and that they're using?
It's better than the current diagnostic tests that we're using because they're being done at the same time, so we can see where metabolic activity is at the same time as the patient is being scanned for the MRI and the PET component. So in many situations, we don't have the ability to do that with separate tests.
All right, that was my only follow-up.
I might provide one last bit of information here. So for example, some patients have a CT scan, some patients have an MRI scan. They're not equivalent scans. They have them for different reasons. So the same thing would be true for the PET MRI. We're still going to have PET CTs out there that are still going to be done. And now we have another modality that has not existed before for us that we can do, that is PET MR. So prior to MR being in existence, we had to rely on CT. When MRI came along, it didn't get rid of CT. It just provided more information that we had at our hands to help diagnose our patients more quickly, more effectively, with better accuracy, and provide improved diagnosis.
All right, thank you. Let's shift to the 2 CT scanners under, open the wrong one again, under 32744. All right. On Bates page 60, under table A, let me just get down to my Bates page 60. This is sometimes harder than it looks. I do apologize. All right, under table A, YNHH states that 2 CT scanners are located at the SRC campus on 1450 Chapel Street, should be hospital-based, not satellite, as shown on the OHS inventory. Explain this rationale.
Welcome to the shot. Okay. Okay, so we have 3 satellite sites that we consider satellite image uses: the Hamden location and the Guilford location. But for some reason, the SRC, or the St. Raphael Hospital CT scanners, were categorized as outpatient when they're actually a hospital, part of hospital license. So those should be looked at as hospital scanners, not as satellite scanners. That's what we're saying. Because they serve ED, they serve inpatient cases, they still have to do procedures on them, and they do some.
Okay, now we are going to go to page 172. Give us all a chance to get there. And it says that YNHH does not list Griffin Imaging and Diagnostic Center at Ivy Brook, 2 Ivy Brook Road, Shelton, as a hospital and satellite CT scanner. Can you explain that?
So which one again? I apologize, I was fumbling.
On page 172 of the application, YNHH does not list Griffin Imaging and Diagnostic Center at Ivy Brook, which is on 2 Ivy Brook Road in Shelton, as a hospital-owned satellite CT scanner. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I don't believe those are in our service area.
Well, you do have a non-hospital ambulatory scanner in Shelton listed. You don't have yours listed though. Or the Griffin Imaging one listed. We have advanced radiology, but not the other one.
So you're asking about ambulatory scanners, and this application is about hospital-based scanners?
Well, as a hospital-based satellite scanner. So you do have things in the area listed, but you're not listing. Would you like the opportunity to recheck your satellite scanners in the service area and the non-hospital satellite scanners and refile? Because you do have advanced radiology consultants in Shelton, which is part of the PSA, but you don't have the satellite one of Griffin Imaging as a hospital-based satellite. Because from this one, it looks like there's only 2 Yale satellite scanners.
Wait, so,
We'll need a minute, please. if we can go
Okay.
on.
okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think with the late file, if that is considered to be in the service area, we will add that back in and include it. But I do want to just clarify that the application that we're putting today is for 2 additional hospital-based scanners in the service area.
I understand, but we do, expect accuracy in all, if you are including it in your application, we may question things that are not, even if it's not directly related, but if you're including it as relying on that, that's in there. And you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. All right. So on a similar vein, Bates page 27. We'll all head back up to the top. All right, table C, YNHH hospital base and satellite does not list Milford Hospital as a hospital based nor a hospital satellite location. Can you explain that?
Table B.
It is listed in table B. We're just focusing on, in table C, we're focusing on, on the Yale New Haven campus area. It is included in the table before.
Okay, so maybe
They're
just,
two different, the tables are entitled. Table B above, which includes Milford, states hospital-based CTs in the service area. And then table C is Yale New Haven hospital-based and satellite CTs. That's why Milford is on top in table B and not in table C.
it's a little confusing. But okay. It's again, I would just maybe careful with the naming for and further, because hospital-based and satellite without further explanation might lead people to wonder why it's not included. All right, so on table number, let's go to Bates page 50. Okay, and now you'll see why it does get a little confusing is it doesn't show on Bates page 50, table C does not list Milford Hospital as a hospital based. Actually, well, it does, but hold on.
Right.
Do you want to revisit that table because it is slightly confusing as to whether
So I think maybe I can help clear that up a second.
yes.
So Milford Hospital is it is a hospital-based CT, but Milford Hospital is not part of Yale New Haven Hospital. It's part of Bridgeport Hospital. So it is in the service area. So Milford is considered in our service area, but it's not one of the Yale New Haven Hospital units. It is part of Milford or Bridgeport.
Bridgeport.
And we include it because it is a hospital-based CT in our service area.
Okay. All right.
Just a friendly reminder from the reporter, if the witnesses could keep their voices up, I am hearing them, but I am straining it sometimes. Thank you. Sorry
Yeah.
for the interruption.
I'm actually going to second that from the court reporter. The people at the back of the room, it is harder to hear you. So if you could speak a little louder, that would actually be really helpful, because sometimes if you hear me going like this, I'm trying to hear what you're saying. So at the back of the room, if you could speak a little louder than you think is necessary, that would be appreciated. All right. I have a question from one of our analysts who would like to see that you initially responded that you are willing to do a late file for a hospital-based versus hospital-based satellite scanners. Are you willing to provide that as late file 5?
Clarification, please.
Mhm.
So when you talk about hospital-based scanners, are you talking about Yale New Haven Hospital only?
Let's take everybody in your PSA.
Well, we are the only hospital in our PSA.
Except for Milford.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true. We gave you that information already. It's in table.
Well, it was given, but it was given in a confusing manner, because you gave us a table where you did the whole PSA, and then you gave us a table where it says all hospital scanners, but it didn't say just at the Yale New Haven hospitals. So why don't we get a clarified chart? Because the two charts that were on page on
Okay,
yeah, let's do a clarified chart with
Yeah.
good titles, with better titles.
we're happy to do that. So are
Okay.
you asking our current table C, which lists Yale New Haven hospital-based satellite CTs? Do you want one table that includes all hospital-based CTs in our service area? Is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
Okay, I am being told that table A1 in our response, our completeness responses. Response to issues already provides what you're looking for. Including fiscal year 24.
Okay.
That is on page
Page
1. It's called Table A1, Yale New Haven Hospital CT scanner utilization updated. And it includes Milford. It's all the hospital-based equipment in the service area. So you have it.
Okay.
So we're gonna.
Does this include the approved but not in use?
No,
Device?
because we submitted this before we completed. The CTs you're referring to, or the MRI?
I'm referring to the CTs that were previously issued 22-32586.
They are,
the multiple devices that were given to the satellite locations.
yeah, they were not included.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which did include, I believe, 2 CT scanners, 2 PET CT scanners, and 2 MRIs.
Yeah, so if you look at table B1, because these 2 CT scanners have yet to be become operational, you know, planning and budgetary reasons. They are listed in table B1 based on projections. That's the best we could do.
Okay. And when are those?
Page 2, I just want to make sure you see page 2 of the issues responses. Okay.
Yeah, I'm there. And when are those going to, are you estimating those to come online?
They're in the queue and they're being, going through a budgetary review process. So probably at least one in 2025, or 2026. They're in the works.
Yeah, projects like this take time and they are a priority and they are in the queue and they will be implemented as quickly as we possibly can.
All right, you guys have frozen again, so whoever just spoke, if you could say your name.
Yeah,
So,
this is Daniel Alexa.
all right, so I'm gonna institute the names while speaking until you unfreeze again. Oh wait, no, you've unfrozen again. All right. Okay, so let me go back to my questions. All right, given the capacity of other non-hospital-based CT scanners, does YNHH send patients to these other available locations? And if not, please explain.
This is Dan Alexa talking again. Since we operate over capacity in our outpatient locations, it would be reasonable to argue or assume that any patients that did not want to wait or who preferred to have their scan done someplace else at a non-ambulatory site have already kind of done so. I think that data is kind of normalized into it. So patients have a choice when they have a scan that is ordered for them, and they can decide to come to one of our locations to have their services done, or they can choose a different hospital or a non-hospital ambulatory location. So if they were waiting longer than they wanted to at one of our sites, or if there wasn't a location, they already have that ability to do that. So I make the assumption that that is already kind of normalized out, that those patients are already making that choice. And so, that's how their utilization is currently set up. It's based off of that.
All right, that's it for our questions on the CT scanners. I will turn it over to Attorney Feldman. If you have any follow-up questions.
If you would just give us a minute to go on mute, we would
Sure.
just need to have a short discussion.
All right.
All right.
Hearing Officer Novy, I do have a rebuttal question for Mr. Alexa.
Go for it.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Alexa, Hearing Officer Novy was referring to the two CT ambulatory scanners that are in the queue to become operational for Yale New Haven Hospital. Can you explain to me how those two CT scanners have any relevance or relation to what we're asking to do on the St. Raphael's campus for those two proton scanning CT scanners? Or would I say that?
Photon counting.
Proton counting, yes. I need coffee.
I think we all could. So what I want to make sure we understand is that what we're really looking for here is to take care of our acute care patients in the hospital setting. And if we look at the site for St. Raphael's Hospital right now, they've got the two CT scanners that service ED patients, inpatients, it services procedure patients, and a small portion of outpatients. Roughly 53% or half that business is ED patients, and another 25% of those are inpatient. What is happening now with the expansion of the ED and the development of the neuroscience tower is if we don't add these CT scanners in that campus, we're going to basically have no ability to perform any inpatient scans or any outpatient scans or any procedures, because the ED volume, which is currently over half of our volume, is going to expand. So the current scanners that we have are essentially going to be dedicated to servicing the acute needs of ED patients that come to the hospital. So we still have inpatients that we have to service. We still have outpatients, procedures that have to be done, interventional radiology procedures done on those scanners, and also the current outpatient base that goes there. St. Raphael is a really good location for a lot of our patients that need to take a bus there, or they have no other means of transportation. It's a good location for them to go to service patients there. So,
So
I guess what I'm really saying is like, if I use an analogy of like a balloon, right now we've shown that our capacity at St. Raphael's Hospital is currently at like 158+%. That's balloon, it should be full at 100. It's up to 150%. If we try to put more into it, it's going to explode. So we need to make the balloon bigger at that site. And then the next point that I want to make is what you asked about was how it relates to the other two scanners that we have approval for. Even when you add those scanners in to our outpatient volume capacity and you include these, it still has us over the 85th percentile, even over 100th percentile for capacity. So despite having these units to support our hospital inpatient acute needs and provide another location for our patients that have transportation issues, it also it only slightly impacts our overall ambulatory availability. So the other scanners are definitely needed. We've already demonstrated the need at those locations. This is an entirely separate need to support a hospital.
So referring to those two scanners, when we came before OHS, we presented to them 2021 data, right? And based on your experience in your role, have you seen the utilization of CT grow?
So we've, whenever you want to, I've been in radiology imaging now at academic medical centers for 26 years. And one of the things that's most important to us is providing the appropriate access to patients. And and we've also learned that imaging touches every service line across the board, so every patient that comes through a hospital is somehow going to be impacted by imaging. So any improvements in imaging access are going to directly result in improvements in the service that they get overall. And to the converse to that, any detriment in access is going to make care more difficult. So by having all of these, by having the right access to patients, by implementing the ambulatory locations, it's going to enable us to provide a high level of care.
But in terms of the information that we had, we took a snapshot 2021 with respect to utilization. If we take a snapshot now in 2024, What's gonna look different in terms of utilization of CT?
Yeah, so we underwent, in between, right in fiscal year 23, we underwent a process improvement plan. So we tried to optimize the current scanners that we have, and that's how you've seen the growth where we are now. Now we're at a point where we can no longer improve the operational efficiencies in our locations. So without adding these, it's going to lead to more backlogs, more delays, and it's going to lead to, patients having a more difficult time to get the results of their diagnosis.
So utilization now is higher than it was in 2021.
Yes.
So are you basically saying that with the 2 additional CTs that we're requesting OHS to approve to be located on the St. Rickles campus, and the 2 CTs that will be ambulatory satellite sites, will we be over capacity with respect to utilization as it relates to CT?
So we are still going to be over capacity, but it is going to reduce it and make it more. It will help, but it will not. We're still going to be well over capacity.
And with respect to those 2 sites that are ambulatory and in the queue, tell me a little bit about the population you hope to serve at that location from the New Haven centric area, the underserved population?
Yeah, so like I've mentioned before, our patients have a choice on where they can go. And so when they have an opportunity, when they're scheduling, they can choose either by location or by first available appointment. So it gives them more options and more opportunity to have their scan. So patients that need a bus or that need to be on a route or something, they can choose a site like St. Rayfields or another hospital, or the main hospital to have their scan done. So the goal is to improve access to everybody and enable us to provide, care more efficiently.
Mr. Alexa, you mentioned that you have your entire professional experience has been at academic medical centers. Can you tell me the academic medical centers you've worked at?
I've worked at Cleveland Clinic and I've worked at NYU Medical.
And in terms of obviously we're comparing different academic medical centers, so it's not an exact science, but does the amount of imaging equipment that Yale New Haven Hospital has compared to NYU and Cleveland Clinic pale at all to those?
Yeah, I think every academic medical center and every hospital faces different challenges, and we have to address them as they come up. I think that's so the answer is yes. Those institutions have more access to more imaging equipment. I think, and to be honest, I think that our plans really got halted a lot, during the pandemic. I think it made it really hard to continue to look at how we're going to invest in advancing, applying for CONs to get the right amount of patients. My goal at all of the locations I've ever worked is to try to have the right amount of capacity for the patients that we need to serve. That's my goal here as well. And in order to get to that point, we need to be able to start to expand our portfolio to handle the current patient volume that we have, based on our optimization, based on the patients that want to come to us. So, that's our challenge here is I'm always looking at first, how do we optimize within our current structure? 2, how can we expand hours by hiring more people? Next is to then say, okay, do we need to increase the number of locations we have to make that balloon a little bit bigger so that we can serve our patients and get them through the care continuum more quickly and efficiently?
Thank you. I have no further questions for Mr. Alexa.
Okay, with that, we will go ahead and actually let me ask. Just gonna wait for Faye to let me know if we've had any signups. Okay, while I do that, I will go ahead and read the public portion. This is the public portion of today's hearing for 2 CON applications filed by Yale New Haven Hospital's SRC location, docket numbers 24-32705 CON and 24-32744 CON. We had the technical portion this morning. And we have not had any signups for today, so I will not read through the instructions for actually, I will make a brief announcement. Is there anybody on this call who would like to make a public comment? Please sign up in the chat function if you would like to make one at this time. Otherwise, anyone who would like to go ahead and submit written comments, we will be open and submitting written comments for 1 week from today up until 11/6. And those written comments can be emailed or mailed, although be careful with mail because you're never quite sure it will get there by 11/6. 7 calendar days from today, and the email address at which you can send email comments is concomment@ct.gov. Again, that is concomment@ct.gov, and our physical mailing address is 450 Capitol Ave, MS number 51, OHS PO Box 340308, Hartford, Connecticut 06134. All right, so I do not have anybody for a public comment. So at this time, I would like to thank Ms. Fentis for keeping that open and looking for public comments. We will move to before I list the late files. Actually, I'll list them first, and then we will ask how long you think you'll need Attorney Feldman to grab those together and go ahead and get those back to us. We have late file 1 is a slide deck that was displayed during the testimony. Late file 2 is to calculate the projected hospital-based MRI utilization in the PSA indicated on CON application 24-32705, ensuring all recent Yale New Haven CON approved units are included. This will also come as a letter to you later, or as an order later. Late file number 3 was to develop a visual representation comparing the PET MRI scanning process to conducting a separate PET and a separate MRI scan, including in the charts detailed information on the 3 types of imaging modalities, advantages. Well, that was not quite exactly what I was looking for. No, sorry, I had that written out for me from somebody else. It was a timeline of the PET MR scans and the MRI/PET CT scans, indicate when additional people and appointments and times are needed. And that I would like a visual representation of that as well, so that the public can see again where they might be saving time, where they might be saving, where the timeline might be less on one, more on another, and where they might save also on less appointments.
I just need some clarification.
Yes.
Sir. Sorry.
It's okay.
I understand what you're looking for, but for what type of imaging?
Just the PET MR versus the one machine versus the 2, going with a PET scan and a separate MRI scan. This is just for the PET MR machine. It's to show the public what the savings or what the benefits might be.
Okay.
In a visual representation. Also, you guys have frozen again, so I do want to say, anybody who talks, we're going to institute the name rule again because it is very frozen. And now you're back. Every time I say it, you come back. So I do appreciate that. All right, and then late file number 4 is for PET MR scanners in use in the New England states and New York. Please provide information that you might have on the costs that patients would face for the PET MR scans conducted at the surrounding facilities, if you have any.
Yeah. I don't think we have access to that information. That is not information that is publicly available or that providers can share.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me go back down. Late file 4. Okay, we'll strike late file 4, so it'll be through late file 3. With those in mind, Attorney Feldman, what do you think would be a reasonable timeline for submission?
Oh, okay. With respect to the, Griffin Ivy, whatever it's called, CT, are you looking for us to include that in a new chart?
I did ask the,
I mean,
I did ask the analyst if she still wanted that. And she indicated that we did not necessarily need late files on that one.
I would agree.
So it'll just be the 3 late files.
Great. How much time do you need? Let's say 10 days, we'll do it. We'll ask for 10 days. We might get it to you on a rolling basis. We're all together sooner. That
How
would be our
about
goal.
we give you a little more because there is a holiday on the 11th. And tomorrow is Halloween, and how about we have them due by the end of the day, November 12th?
That's fine.
I always err on the side of caution, and then when there's a holiday involved, I know things get a little crazy. So
Thank you.
all right, so we will have those due November 12th. That is Tuesday by 4:30 p.m., please. You've also frozen again. I'm going to say it, and you will unfreeze magically. All right, so, and now you've unfrozen. Thank you. Again, so at this point, we will have those due by the close of business on November 12th. And we will move to closing arguments and statements from the applicant's attorney at this time, Attorney Feldman.
Thank you. I don't have a whole lot, but I do have something to say, and I'm going to just try to summarize what we are basically trying to present here today. Some of these statements are personal, my opinion, and I believe that we are truly fortunate to have an academic medical center like Yale New Haven Hospital, which commits to these very innovative and important projects in our state. In this specific application, more specifically, we're talking about a much needed expanded ED. As you probably have heard, there's a lot of ED crowding, a lot of ED utilization, and we need to respond to that by increasing the size, more than doubling the size of the ED on the St. Raphael's campus. And as you saw in Dr. Lauren's pre-filed testimony, those 2 neurosciences towers are just remarkable, and it's very exciting that we will have the level of service that they will bring and the innovation that will continue to develop new treatments for people that are suffering from neurological and neurodegenerative diseases. And more of that. I mean, some of the things that I heard today regarding autism, PTSD, depression, OCD, it's just truly amazing. And I believe that the Neurosciences Center will become a destination, not only for residents in Connecticut, but I think from all over the country and all over the world. And we're so lucky to have Dr. Lawrence, who talked about the importance of IMRI and the uses for it in the OR, in the Neurosciences Center, and how not having IMRI will truly be a disadvantage to patients. We were also so fortunate to hear from Dr. Goodman about the proposal to acquire PET MRI, which will provide our physicians at Yale with information that they don't currently have. What are they going to do with this information? They're going to be able to diagnose more accurately and treat people more precisely. We've seen through the research studies that with this information, staging and treatment radically changes. So instead of working in a dark room, we're going to have light shining on the diagnostic process, and that is truly amazing. You also heard about the addition of these two CT scanners on the SRC campus. They are needed because if we don't have them, we're going to have problems. We're going to have very limited access to CT. And these very next generation CT scanners are the first in the state, but they will provide more accurate information also. And we're likely to see more proton scanners in the state. But even with those two incremental CTs, which will be fully utilized by the St. Raphael's campus, we do have two new CTs online. And even with the addition of those two CTs, we strongly believe that the demand for CT will not decrease. It will continue to increase, and that we will be over capacity at the point in time when all these CTs are operational. And why are we asking for it now? Because you saw the pictures. We are building. And this is not something we just bring in on a dolly and plop it down and we're ready to go, plug it in and good to go. This requires very specific construction and planning and budgeting to get this all ready for the date of 2027. I want to end with a few what I believe to be salient and important points. As I said earlier, I really think that the amount of imaging equipment here that Yale New Haven Hospital has is really insignificant compared to other neighboring academic medical centers, whether you look at Columbia or NYU or Cornell or Mass General. We are really not even close. But to continue to attract the best and the brightest physicians to Yale New Haven Hospital, we have to have available to us the necessary technology so that they could do cutting edge treatments and progressive innovative care. We believe that looking at some of the capacity issues with other non-Yale based ambulatory radiology centers is truly irrelevant, in that we don't have control over the quality. We don't have control over the protocols. And I think we demonstrated in last year's imaging CON that physicians want the imaging to be done by Yale physicians and read by Yale physicians. We want to avoid duplication. We don't want people to have a scan in some community location and then come to Yale New Haven Hospital and have to have it repeated. So I guess the point is that not all providers are equal, and patients just cannot be shunted around because it leads to delays, leads to duplication, and it negatively impacts quality. Finally, I just want to ask OHS and OHS staff to think about, from your perspective and the perspective of patients, what it's like to have a neurodegenerative diagnosis, or think you have one, or to have a stroke, or have a loved one have a stroke. We all want, the first thing, if you've experienced this, and I have experienced this, is we want access as quickly as possible. We don't want to wait 12 days before we're scanned or imaged. And we want to make sure that the imaging we have doesn't miss anything, because I've had that happen too. So that's really what I want to leave you with. It's truly amazing here that Yale, as a safety net hospital, will be able to offer all patients that come to it with the most innovative and exciting and precision-based medicine in the state. And I thank you for your time, and I have no further comments.
All right, thank you, Joan. I did want to let you know that you did freeze actually quite quickly, but because we could hear you, we let it
It's
go.
fine with me.
We could hear you, so I didn't want to interrupt your closing. You are frozen at the moment, so I'm gonna institute the name rule again. And now you're back. Every time I say it, it comes back. So I do apologize, but I want to thank you all for attending today. We have the late files due on November 12th, and the record of this hearing will remain open until closed by OHS at a later date. Thank you to everybody, and again, thank you to our court reporter, and we will see you later. This hearing
Thank you.
is now adjourned for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.